Hey everyone, welcome back to Hack and Tell, the show where we meet founders from the Arweave ecosystem and discuss interesting ideas about the things people are building. Today I'm very glad to say that we have the team from Gitopia with us. Guys, welcome.
Thanks.
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone watching.
Okay, so maybe you could take the audience through kind of what Gitopia is, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So we start from scratch. We started like Gitopia in the hackathon open web incubator, and we brought out a rudimentary version, like an MVP at that time, which we published. Then for the past 2 months, we were building more on it. So right now, what we pushed across, I'll show it to you along with the slides also. 1 second.
Oh, okay. They've left the stage. Hopefully they come back at some point. So I'll give a quick outline while they're gone about what Gitopia is and why we at Arweave are so excited about it. Arweave, there we go.
Sorry, I made
back.
Dropping out. Yeah. So I was showing.
Hey guys.
Yeah. So
Can you see your screen?
yeah. So
I can see a blank screen now. There we go. Yes, I can see now.
this is launched. We actually launched it today itself. Everything is pushed today. So in order to use Gitopia is just what do you say? We take the power of Git, like Git for versioning, and as Arweave provides like permanent storage to us. So imagine pushing your repos and they being accessible forever to you. And what like recent incidents with YouTube DL and everything that has been going on showed us that it is not the utopia we think it is, right? Open source is just it won't be always there, right? So, but for that we had to reduce friction, as in developers are very used to the Git command line, right? And to move away from the Git command line, it would be challenging. So initially in the first version, we released dgit, which was a separate, which added a learning curve to learn that command line. But here we've used the Git remote helper. So the user only needs to install this in the local machine, and then they can use by default the Git command line too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's one line to install, and then you can use decentralized permanent Git. This is essentially the offering.
Yes. So this.
Wow.
So once the user has this remote helper on the command line, then their Git command line now knows how to talk to this remote, to Gitopia remote. So then after that, workflow remains constant, as in the user can push, pull, and force push whatever the user wants to. That remains the same. The user doesn't have to learn a new command line to use this. Yeah.
And the best is like for cloning, you don't even need any wallet assets. So it's very easy to like share this across to other user, and they can clone it.
Very cool. Amazing. So you're essentially trying to decentralize GitHub, right?
Yeah. Right.
So what was the inspiration for this? How did you get towards that idea?
Okay, so it was again back to the hackathon when we started to build, and at that time, since Arweave already provides data storage, right? Building an abstraction over it didn't make sense for us, as in Arweave is already providing data storage. Why should we do and provide an abstraction of that data storage? Or what would be a better way to abstract that by providing more value to it, not just a simple query over Arweave, right? So at that time, we figured that this was a bit challenging, and then we can go ahead with this. And yeah, it has tested us through these 3 months, and yeah, we've been able to launch it also. So good.
Yeah, congratulations on the launch today. That's very, very cool. I've seen kind of, well, what was then dgit, now Gitopia, kind of evolve over the months, and it's been amazing to see the pace you guys are going at. Yeah, I guess the first question I have is, how did you guys like meet? Like, how did this come about? So I kind of understand you got involved in the open web incubator that we had like back in the summertime. Feels like a long time ago now. But yes, but how did you guys like get together? Were you like friends already, or what?
Yeah, so we are already working together, like building blockchain products and all. So like we already were experienced in this crypto space, and so over the summer we had some extra time. We were figuring out like what could we build. I mean, because we are busy throughout the year with some other client projects and all. So this time we took the initiative to and we found about RWave incubator program from Gitcoin. So we
coming back to more. So before that, like we used to, in 2015, both of us did meet. We did Google Summer of Code separately. Like both of us got into Google Summer of Code, and then after that, I dropped out of college, and he completed his college. But we ended up working in the same company at that time. And after that, I got into crypto completely, and since then I've been in crypto.
So I mean, we have like experience of doing open source for like more than 4 years. So we are already in this field.
So GitHub, like open source and GitHub, we are building a GitHub alternative. But let's say like we really admire GitHub like for what they do and what they've, even though they got acquired by Microsoft. But like that GitHub love is still there. But recent events, like they put a light upon what is possible throughout, like in future, what can happen. So we can probably prepare from now for that. Yeah.
I think it's certainly true that we owe a debt of gratitude to GitHub in the same way that we also do to Ethereum and indeed to Bitcoin when we're building like a potentially more advanced or at least different types of blockchains. It's the same sort of relationship. I think we can be respectful of the past while also looking to what we can build in the future. Okay, cool. So could you guys lay out, so I already kind of understand where you guys are going with Gitopia now. I'm sorry. But it would be amazing. It's going to take a while to retrain. It would be amazing if you could kind of take the audience through where it is you want this thing to be in like 5 years' time. And I think you have some like super exciting ideas around community ownership of code repos. So maybe you could walk us through it.
Right. So right now, if you consider the base, right, if you want a decentralized platform where you can contribute code, such as suppose a decentralized GitHub, how would you take about it?
Yeah.
So first, the base that we build right now is code repos in versioning, basically using Git remotely and Git in a decentralized way. The repos are spread across the perma web, and then so this right now is still single user. Right, I have my keys, I can push code, only I can edit my code, right? But everyone can clone my code right now, since this is all for open source right now. But if we take things further, right, how GitHub has organizations, so we can bring communities, or let's say DAOs, sort of, where the people in the community come together and they vote, like they want this feature to go into the repo. Right. Yeah. And once they vote, the best part about, like, you also know that community XYZ, right? Once they vote, we can attach a bounty to that vote. I mean, the people also can attach opportunity to that, as in a certain tokens to that. So what that then happens is that incentivizes people to push more, and then they contribute. Like they do that feature, they complete the feature and get it merged. But the best part about is the community got it merged, as in it was a community initiative, not an initiative of me or the individual maintainers. Right. Till now, what Gitopia is what we have thought things to be, and we built it like that. But down the line, we would want the community to come together and think on what do they want, what should we build on it, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It points at this kind of secret or hidden point of centralization in the crypto world, which is like, yes, everything's open source, but the reality is who has commit access to the repos controls basically what the miners are going to run on their machines, and that controls the protocols. So what you guys are doing with this idea of DAO or community controlled repos by like voting to include or not include PRs is just incredible. I think that's like, it literally is Gitopia. You feel like this is an extension of the vision that was put forward in the original versions of Git.
Sure.
Yeah. So okay, amazing.
We can also bring up like these incidents. YouTube is of course an incident which is widely known that happened right now only, but earlier on also in the crypto community, let's say when Bitcoin Cash ABC, they wanted to merge that infrastructure proposal which was giving more fees. So there was a developer which
Yeah.
went ahead and removed that code and wrote a proposal that, hey, this shouldn't be done, we should remove it. And the maintainers just kicked out that long-term contributor from their repo and still went ahead with it. So that is not how things should work ideally. There is a centralization problem with GitHub, but also with the community also. Like GitHub has a centralization problem, but individual communities also have a centralization problem where the power lies, keys lies within a few people. They take all the decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And instances like that where it comes down to the repo becomes the battlefield, right? Like who's going to kick who out first and who's going to commit which code is really not how we should be running these decentralized open networks. So you're absolutely right to point that out. And I think there's like a whole bunch of instances like that. It's very, very interesting. So, okay. It also highlights something pretty exciting from the point of view of, are we profit sharing communities? Because if you guys are going to use community.js, the library that Cedric has produced, then that means that all of the existing profit sharing communities can now have, like everyone is a code maintainer in some sense. Everyone can vote on the inclusion or not of PRs inside the code base. That's really exciting. It means that like investors and people that are just kind of, would you say, potentially more passive participants normally can actually like at least have their hands on the levers if they want to, which can be really interesting to see how that plays out. It's a very different game than like equity investing,
Right, very true. Also, I would like to know your thoughts upon like we were recently thinking about the utility of the token, right? We are launching in process of launching the LORE token. More details on that later.
Yeah.
But so that token in the space is a PST token, right? That provides us with whatever the application is making, that provides with the distribution of funds to the holders, right? But
Yes.
in I think it'll be helpful for other founders also to hear on this. Like, what do you think? If we consider that a utility, as in if I use that token to perform some actions on my platform, right? Along with that, it also has a PST value. How do these dynamics play?
Well, I mean, lots of different founders are taking lots of different approaches. There's the like pure profit sharing token approach, which says, look, this in fact, there's actually, even that there's differentiation. There's like a literal pure profit sharing token. So the first contract we ever made on SmartWeave was token.js, and it just allows you to move tokens around. And then you can make an application. I think weve.email, the Weavemail client, uses this model still, where there's just a set amount of tokens and you just distribute tips relative to the ownership share of that token, and that's it. That is the entire utility of the token. There's nothing else going on. Then, of course, there were profit-sharing communities after this, and I think most of the projects that are active in the space are using profit-sharing communities now, where the supply is technically uncapped, but it has to be voted upon by the existing token holders to increase it. And that obviously gives a governance right as well as a profit access right. Right. So that's interesting. That's like the base case in the ecosystem right now. But others are experimenting with. So, for example, this is the case in Verto. You have to stake VRT tokens in order to provide essentially economic security that the actions you're doing, so essentially off-chain compute, are actually going to be legitimate, and they can slash that stake if you did them illegitimately. And providing the compute provides you with fees, essentially. Okay. So there's those kinds of staking mechanics. I don't know if you call staking a utility. Some people do, some people don't. And then there are other people that are just like, no, I want you to buy my token and either burn it or transfer it when you use my platform.
Right.
So that would be a more pure utility approach.
A lot of experimentation on this.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure we'll end up with like even weirder stuff, frankly, over time. I mean, we've only been going on this for like 3 months now. Right. And already we're seeing this like diaspora of different use cases for the tokens emerging. But all of them have the base one. And I think this is the one that is, frankly, particularly exciting, to me at least, because I think that when we get this proposition to the wide market, they will also see why this is obviously valuable, which is profit sharing. So people are using the application. If I hold this token, I accrue some of the value created by that application. It's just like fundamentally better version of the dividends system that is typically used in equity investing. Like, just imagine if you could have done this with Facebook. It would be incredible. Like, it would be a really, really valuable asset relative to, actually, if you look at Facebook's stock today, it's frankly quite difficult to identify where the real value comes from. It doesn't really give you any tangible voting rights, and it definitely doesn't give you access to any dividends. So what precisely is it you're buying? Compare that with a profit-sharing token. It's like, I am buying access to the future profits or even revenue, depending on the way you look at it, of an application which is built. It cannot be taken down by anyone, and there are users of this thing, and say the users are growing. Then it looks like just a very obviously good asset.
Right.
So I think that's the sort of value case that's going to appeal in a kind of non-crypto market eventually. I think that will take off. I'm pretty sure if we can get it to that stage, we can get interest in it. I'm not sure that. So I think governance tokens are exciting. I think that there's a potential, and I haven't seen this crop up in the Arweave community yet, fortunately, but there's a potential that pure governance tokens lead to very, very dangerous incentives. So if I'm not mistaken, Compound started like this, and they've changed it now potentially, but at least at the beginning, it was like you buy comp, and then you can vote on proposals in the comp protocol, and you don't have to lock the tokens, you just vote. And that's what comp allows you to do, it's just governance. But the danger there is like, okay, so if I hold the tokens, if I don't think that comp is going to increase in, like, if I don't think comp is going to increase in value, why do I hold the tokens?
Right.
There's no reason. And then it's like, well, it's got this utility of governance. And then the smart people look at this and they say, okay, so I can bend the governance to my will to make essentially, what do you call, like, out of band profits.
Right.
So in the case of Compound, you might deliberately vote. So you buy a bunch of some terrible token, you deliberately vote to get that token listed as one of the tokens that receives comp rewards. So create a pool for it, which then leads a whole bunch of people to go and buy this terrible token that isn't worth anything, and then you can sell it, and then you can also sell your Compound as well. And so now you've done this thing that's no good for the protocol, and you've also made more of a profit. Whereas at least with profit-sharing tokens, and indeed profit-sharing communities, when you do governance, your governance right is relative to the amount of time that you've locked the tokens, as well as the number of tokens you have. So you're locked into the outcomes of your decisions, which is a very good mechanism to have. And then also you're receiving profit. You're essentially receiving a share of profit. So you want that to increase. You're incentivized to perform governance that leads to an increase in profit. And that, like, is a sane sort of, what would you say, incentive structure. But definitely governance tokens can go wrong. And utility tokens, you know, in 2017, there was a lot of hype around utility tokens, but I think a lot of them were, it's kind of arguably misplaced. It's like, well, you don't really need that token to be there. You just kind of needed some way of funding the project. And it was, from a regulatory point of view, the advantageous thing to do. And so people did it. And then they made really dangerous models where, like, you literally just paid for something. So in your guys' case, it would be that you had Lure tokens that were just transferred when you purchased. That would be very dangerous because it has very, very high velocity. Like, there's no sync in this system. The tokens are just moving around, which is not great for value. And on top of that, also then you have to have liquidity of the Lure token has to be very high in order for people to get on board with the system. It's just not ideal. And they actually have to touch another token as well, which is also kind of annoying. So I don't know, that's just some thoughts on token models. I know this is something you guys are thinking about. So where are you heading with this?
Yeah, so even in this launch, so I'll just show across my screen once again. So basically, I'll tell first. So basically, GitHub, we don't expect everyone to move from GitHub right away, right? You can't just say Gitopia is here, we are just coming to Gitopia now. So
it's Utopia, let's go.
Yeah. So GitHub will still be there. So right now what we've launched is GitHub Actions. So it's also in the marketplace. So if a end user, like for me, if I'm a developer, I just want to mirror my repos, right? I don't want to access Gitopia. I just for fail safe, I want to mirror my repos to Gitopia. I'll actually
Yeah.
share my screen.
Yeah.
So I'll just add this action. One second. So I'll add this mirror action that we published in my own repo. So this is the marketplace link. So yeah, so this once I added as a YML file in my own repo on every push. So here it is specified master. So every time I push master branch of my repo to GitHub, automatically that will be pushed to Gitopia. So I don't need to again go to my command line and do it. Here is in something in action. So this is the Gitopia repo that has been pushed directly by pushing. So this is directly pushed to Gitopia.
Wow.
And it lives here. So this is the repo view right now. So this is the Gitopia repo. Here is the badge that we just published. So please, if you use Git, please put on this badge. Yeah.
Nice. Wow, that's cool. Congratulations. That I think the user experience for onboarding from GitHub is going to be everything, right? Everyone is in GitHub land right now.
Right.
If you can make it, and it seems that you basically have, so that like it takes like 2 minutes or something just to like press a couple of buttons and then boom, now your GitHub repo is being mirrored in this cool decentralized Utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
yeah, it's really neat. Okay, and so let me see. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have?
Yeah. So
Sorry,
we actually published this blog as in a step-by-step guide for the user how to actually use the GitHub action.
Amazing.
It is actually available right through our website. It says blog here. You can access it from here. Also in the blog that we've mentioned, we've said, so we are actually releasing, distributing 250K of lore tokens for the next 3 months. So we still have to figure out the details as in what actions that we'll choose, but ideally we'll let's say for now the push actions through the GitHub action, the push through the command line, that drives user adoption, let's say social or feedback or issues. So all these subjective things we can figure out how much to give, but then overall we are planning to distribute 250K lore tokens in the period of let's say next 3 months. And then we'll identify avenues where the distribution actually worked the most, and then we can actually take ahead from there. So ideally, we want to deploy distribute more than 50% of our tokens to the community, because I think that is the only way to actually get this adopted. I will just go ahead with the distribution. So we have to experiment first with a small amount and see what works, and then we can go ahead with continuous distribution throughout the lifetime of Gitopia.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's that's the real utopian vision. It's like when you start telling people, it's not only that it's a decentralized version of GitHub where you don't have to trust any centralized party and you can all vote together as a community based on who has a bigger stake, and the amount of time they're locked on the outcomes of that community, so how long they're willing to stake their tokens and how many tokens they have, which is a pretty good governance mechanic. Allows you to basically control the code repo. And then on top of that, by using this thing, you're actually earning ownership of the platform itself. It's the precise opposite model that you would get in a Web2 company, where essentially you're having to pay and to get locked into their platform where you control nothing. It's amazing. I think like when you get that going properly, it'll be an incredible driver of growth. Like if we can communicate that idea to people, there's just no stopping this. I think that it's just an objectively better model from the user's perspective, at least. So that's really cool. And it's really interesting. This is a conversation we've been having over the last few weeks. Like how Okay, so there's obviously a lot of promise in this profit sharing token distribution reward mechanism. The question is like, how do we kind of experiment? What's the methodology for finding the right way to give away these rewards? That's something that's really interesting. It's been kind of like floating around the community since maybe 3 or 4 weeks now, as people are trying to get to grips with like, okay, I've got my profit sharing community, I've got my web application, I want to give some ownership of it, I want to decentralize control. How do I actually go about doing it? Do you guys have any thoughts on that? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, even we are experimenting on it. So ideally we thought what our main audience would be, as in who would we want to, like, ideally we cannot control everything, but then who do we want to be a stakeholder in this, in Gitopia, right? Primarily developers, maintainers, people who are actively taking part. Not, of course, there will be investors, but majority chunk we want people who are actively taking part in the developer community to actually build a developer tool which they can use in the future, right? So that can only happen when these tokens fall in the right hands, like majority of them fall in the right hands, right? When they can come, contribute, help us build the actual product that people want, right?
Become active stakeholders, essentially. I was just saying, yes, your users become the stakeholders, and then they can just choose what they want for the platform.
Right. So right now we even still we don't know like what would be the actual market or where is the right distribution. So that's why we've taken a small chunk to experiment. That we'll experiment in the next 3 months, which we believe is the right audience to go to, and from there we'll identify these routes which actually worked, and then we can go with larger distribution there.
That makes a lot of sense. I think kind of rapidly pivoting the ideas around distribution events and experimenting, and then doubling down on the ones that work will probably be the basis of the model that people come up with eventually. But the question, and I wonder if you guys have any thoughts on this actually, is like, how are you going to measure success? So you have one of these reward events. It's very clear that like one thing you could optimize for is how many active stakeholders can we get for the lowest number of tokens we give, because it's essentially marketing budget, right? Sure. Like this is just tokens that you can give to people, and they have a value. So it's like you're giving away, you're spending equivalent of money essentially.
But the part about is last night also we were like in your yesterday call with Jesse also you were discussing about this. That earlier we were also thinking that we are actually giving away majority of the tokens for free, but actually that is not the case. So that amount is actually getting us value, as in that can be bounties, that can be social, that can be adoption. But this is providing us straight away value. It's not just giving away tokens. Yeah.
No, exactly. I totally agree. And this is something that I think the ecosystem is really going to kind of get its head around over the next maybe 3 to 6 months, is that this has nothing to do with giving things away for free. This is actually marketing budget. This is like value that you can use to acquire users. And in the normal traditional Web2 equity space, you would take your equity to a VC, you would swap it for money, you would take the money, and then you would essentially go and try and buy users. Cost of user acquisition is like, a core metric that you would look at if you're starting a Web2 company. You're essentially saying instead of selling the ownership of the project that you're working on, let's actually give that ownership to people directly, almost cutting out a step actually. But it's a different mindset, that it's not obvious that what you're doing is not just giving away something. You're actually spending, really, is a better way of looking at it.
Yeah, right. While we were figuring out, discussing about the token allocation model, it was very hard to gauge, this is not the percentage that we are giving away for free. Like earlier we were thinking it's just free token that we have to give away for the community. This is how everything works. But then once you look into it, and I saw your podcast yesterday, so it was very clear that this is not just giving away tokens, right? Each and every member would be contributing something. That's why that person is getting these tokens.
Exactly.
So it's actually delivering a lot more value than we could buy it out front against those tokens.
Yeah, precisely. So it's not even that. So in a traditional space, equity space, you take the equity, you sell it, you get money, and then you buy customers. And the customer has a lifetime value, and then you just have to make sure that the customer's lifetime value is higher than the acquisition cost. and there you go. Well, I mean, minus some, but anyway, that's the broad model, right? But here, you're actually doing something very different. You're not just like buying customers with your ownership stakes, but you're also then buying community members. Like you're bringing people into the fold that are going to provide value, not just in their usage of the product, but also potentially in governance decisions and other kinds of contribution to the application that you're building, the platform that you're building over time. I think it's going to be super, super powerful. And as Jesse said yesterday, it's probably only going to take one person to get this right and to show what this can do in the consumer space, right. And it'll take off dramatically. And I actually personally think that you guys might well be those people. Like you have a developer-facing product.
Very true.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Our product lies exactly in that space where we have to build it as a community, otherwise it won't work. So we have that's not an option for us. We have to take that path because we are building it for the community. The community has to be involved at the start only.
Yeah. And you're speaking to developers, so you're speaking to a technical audience, which really helps because it's going to be harder to do this with Facebook or something like that, where you're speaking to people that really have no understanding of technology. So that's a big head start. And then I think your value proposition, which is that open source code should be free, freely available to everyone forever, as well as better source controls. And then also, by the way, if you use this thing, you earn a stake in the governance and ownership of it, and indeed the future profits of it. Once you tell people that, I find it hard to believe that won't work. So this is very, very exciting.
Yeah, and also for the developers, right? It's very intriguing, to see the application directly working from the Git command line itself. Right, yes. We're not giving any other tooling to the developer. And for cloning, they don't even need to have an RV wallet. They just can do git clone and our remote. If they have the remote helper, it's just download from RV. So that's very powerful. Yeah. For the developers, if I say we're just using git command line, which you already know, that is a selling point for the developer. He doesn't have to install new things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's super powerful. You're basically in the existing development environments. I was thinking, I can use this so once upon a time I used to be a good developer. Good. But now I am a terrible CEO that uses a MacBook. And nowadays, if I need to interact with a code repo, I don't use the Git command line, I use Git Kraken. Because it's got a GUI and my terrible brain can only handle that nowadays. But it's a GUI, and I realized, this is just using the Git protocol. So basically what you guys have done is created a compatibility layer between the Git protocol and Arweave, and now everything that works with Git immediately works with Gitopia.
Right.
Wow, that's amazing.
If you clone Gitopia, you can still use that tool that you use. It won't break anything.
Exactly. Yeah, which is just unbelievable. I mean, that's a whole different game. It's a very, very smart play to kind of suck up the market, because you can just do something like this GitHub action and be like, yeah, of course you can. So check out this amazing new thing. By the way, you can own a piece of it. And all of the, would you say, ownership and exploitation dynamics of a Web2 company are gone, and arguably even inverted. So instead of being owned, you are being owned by this project or product. You end up owning the product. And then, by the way, you can set it up in 2 minutes, and it integrates with all of your existing workflows. And you never even have to think about it if you don't want to. You just set it up once, and that's it.
Right.
Wow. It's hard to imagine that not working. So with that in mind, what are you guys thinking for the early adoption, strategies? You seem to have basically everything in place. It's just a question of getting in front of people. So what are your thoughts in that area?
So everything seems in place because we just pushed it today. So we still have
congratulations,
right. We still have to work on those details. But we were building things. Our first good strategy right now is the open source projects. Right now, RV, whatever projects are there in RV, they are because they know how to use an RV wallet, they know Git, and they are a developer community. They are at the forefront of it. They can come in first and share the rewards. We can distribute it to them. They can come on board, tell us what is wrong with us. We can improve. And then we can approach a wider decentralized audience that is everywhere right now. All projects that are DeFi projects, because they are promoting something which is not built into them. They are promoting decentralization and their code is still on GitHub. GitHub can tomorrow say, if a company says this company is committing a crime, or they can send a DMCA, GitHub would have to put it down, right? And then they lose all the issues, all the PRs, all the projects, their only code, everything is gone, right?
Yeah.
Entire flow is gone. So why not have a copy of it on the Gitopia? And we are trying to make it as smooth as GitHub, right? And once that happens, right, there is no use. Like, you can still use Gitopia, you can convert to Gitopia slowly, but that will happen over time. It's not a one-shot thing.
So smart. Yeah, you're thinking about it this amazing way. Yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. Okay, cool. So I guess the final thing to talk about is your guys' fundraising plans. And I remember a conversation we had maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago now, about we were looking at setting up a small angel round, and it seemed like basically you had everything together, but then you decided to turn it down to potentially raise later. Maybe you can talk the rest of the community through the decision process and the factors you were thinking about at that time.
Sure. So at the time when we built the product, it was just a month, right? And at that time we were starting to learn a few things and how the product works, so we are core backend engineers, and we got to know front end. We developed a lot of things on it, over the course of time. But what we published in DGIT, and what offers we were getting, right, at that time, we didn't think that was wise to liquidate that much equity at the time, so that we have a lot more because we have to distribute a lot, right? If we liquidate a lot at that time, it'll be harder for us. And we didn't need the money at the time. We just needed partnerships. So we said, why not just work on it 2-3 more months and see what happens? And it was a good decision. So
I definitely think so. It's super smart, because now you're in a position where you can raise a much higher valuation.
Right.
And you, the founders, keep more of the thing that you've built, which is, the reality of founding a project or a company, depending on the space you're in, is that you, the founders, it's just every day, you're going to wake up and you're going to work on this thing. And it's it's going to take an immense amount of dedication to get it there, to get it going in the first place. Ultimately, what it comes down to at the end of the day, is two things. So you can be motivated by meaning, the meaningfulness of the work you're doing. You really want this thing to exist in the world. Yeah. And the other motivation people have is a profit motive. And typically you need some combination of two in order to really push things to the level that they need to be at in order to make something succeed. Absolutely. Making sure that you don't get diluted too much right at the beginning is a very, very smart move. I was very glad to see that you guys were thinking that way. And then also now, 2 or 3 months later, so obvious that it was the right move. So congratulations on that.
And other thing, we wanted to validate ourselves, whether we could try to build. So because we wanted to get the foundation right, whether we'd be able to replicate most of the features of GitHub, the hosting part, so that with this release, we are able to do that. Even it works with large repos. So now we can move forward with. So that with
a lot of confidence, we believe the product now. We build it. We've been in for 4 months in and out. So it's a lot of confidence is there. Yeah. So you can just. So we've been fixing issues for a while now. There have been a lot of issues throughout, but so now we are more confident in it. If some issues come, we know where it is coming from or where to look at it, so we can scale it way faster now.
Awesome. That's amazing. And so before you guys raise, I think you're going to try and onboard lots of the projects from the Arweave ecosystem. I think that's going to be really exciting to see over the next few weeks. I mean, out of interest, have you guys timed how long it takes from someone gets the blog post to when they're integrated and they're essentially pushing all their commits to master to DGIT? Sorry, Gitopia, not DGIT anymore.
So ideally, I'll walk you through the whole process. It is mentioned in steps in the blog. You can go through it, but I'll just tell you. So you, first of all, you have to add a YML file in your repo. That takes 2 minutes, 1 minute, less than that. And then you push the repo. That's all that you have to do yourself. Once you push the repo, everything is done by GitHub. GitHub actually runs that action behind in the scenes. If your repo is very huge, so the first push will take time because so many objects, all the history has to be pushed, but the subsequent pushes will be very fast. So if you clone it, it will be big repos take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, to clone thousands of objects directly from Arweave. Pushing incremental updates is 10 seconds, very low. And then only huge repos it takes time, but then that is the initial push. That is, but then that's the best. It is done by GitHub Actions. So you just push it and you forget about it.
Yeah.
And it's so cool, right? You just push it on your local machine. You're not waiting for anything, and then the background GitHub is actually out there pushing to Gitopia.
And, the best thing is you can integrate directly to your deployment workflows and all. Like, let's say now the most of the companies deployment is stuck when GitHub is down or not accessible. So you can have a fail mechanism where if the GitHub is not working, you can just clone from Gitopia.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah. And there were like 4 instances where GitHub was down in a month, like a couple months ago. Sorry?
So the infra team doesn't have excuse anymore that GitHub is down. So
yeah. Wow, that's so cool. That's very cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been fascinating. And I think as everyone can tell, I'm very excited to see how you guys progress with this thing. Is there anything else you want to chat about before we go?
Yeah, so you guys can follow us on Twitter and join our Discord links to get to know more details about the opportunity, how you can get part of this low tokens. So yeah, we'll push updates there.
Awesome. Okay, so I think the critical thing is like a lot of people will listen to this and they'll be like, wow, that actually sounds really cool. I can probably do that. So from right now, what's the easiest path to now I'm pushing my stuff to Gitopia? I mean, how do they find your blog post, I guess?
Yeah, so you just go to gitopia.org. All the links are there on the top right side. You can go read the blog. You can visit the GitHub. So instead of GitHub, we've given the Gitopia link also where our code is hosted.
Hosted on GitHub.
Yeah, and also it has the Discord link. So everything is there on the
website,
gitopia.org.
Okay, amazing. All right, thank you so much, guys. I'm excited to maybe do a follow-up, like 6 months from now, something like that, and we can see how growth is going.
Sure.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Thanks. Bye, guys.